What's the most painful rejection you ever got? Contribution Putrid 18 said. I went traveling through Sweden with a friend back in college, which was a lot longer ago than I want to admit. He was completely enamored with Swedish women and was continually attempting to seduce them. Excuse me, do you speak English? He asked one of them one day, to which she replied not today and continued walking. Charlie Tuna said. Ouch. I remember when I was backpacking Europe with my college roommate, we were in Germany waiting for an overnight train, so we went for drinks nearby. We met these girls who were there and started getting along, so we missed our train. So now we're in town for the night, so the girls were eager to show us around the nightlife. I can't remember how we got separated, but I wound up going back to the bar where the insanely gorgeous waitress was giving me free drinks, then offers to let me sleep in her car, then she'll drive me to her place to cook me breakfast in the morning. I'm trying to sleep and hear them banging on the window trying to get me to go with them. I didn't want to because that waitress was really hot, but went out drinking until 6 a.m. with them, then got on our train and they gave us their contact info. Roommate and I part ways for a few days, and he decides he's going back to see those girls. Good, one of us better be getting laid after that night. But he shows up, lets them know it's just him in town and if they wanted to go out again. They tell him they're lesbians and totally brush him off. He was devastated since we hit it off so well and they seemed excited to see us again. Ask Me for a Story said. This one is funny, but it's not as painful as you would think, especially not in the eyes of a young college man. When I was that age, I asked out the most beautiful girl I had ever seen. This girl's name was Rebecca and she was related to Cameron Diaz. Their moms were sisters, so occasionally Cameron would come visit the University of Missouri and hang out with Rebecca. I saw them together one Sunday at a winery called Le Bourgeois. Two beautiful tall blonde women with movie star good looks, but that day just two cousins sitting on a picnic table by the river drinking wine. I was in the finance club at Mizzou, and one weekend we all went on a trip to Chicago. Becca was on this trip as well. She just radiated beauty. We met with Warren Buffett and we got to go on the floor of Chicago Board of Trade, and it all made for a great trip, but the magic night happened on our last night in Chicago. It was an unseasonably warm April night not far from Lake Michigan, and we were all walking around together and laughing and exploring the town. We saw a comedy theater called Second City, and then we ate at a deep dish pizza place called Giardina's right on Navy Pier. It was an amazing night. Becca was by me the whole time, and at dinner she even put her hand on my arm and was laughing when I told a joke. I'm good at jokes and stories in big crowds like that. Ask Me for a Story said. When we left, we all walked around Navy Pier and Becca and I were towards the back as the group was leaving. The last dust from the fireworks over the water fizzled off and I said to her, "Hey, Becca, when we get back to Columbia, do you want to go out one night, just the two of us?" It took everything in my body to muster up the courage to say that. As soon as it came out of my mouth, I was so proud of myself. She stopped walking completely, grabbed both of my arms and looked me right in the eyes. She said only 4 words, but sometimes I still think back on those 4 words and smile. She goes, No, I don't." I smiled so big, she must have thought I was crazy. She jogged forward and caught up with the group, but I hung back by the water, looking out over it and smiling so big. I wasn't even upset at all. I had just shot my shot. I was proud of myself. I had asked out the most beautiful girl in the world, to this day my favorite rejection of all time. Iceburn said. That happened to me once, sort of. I was at a concert at a club and had a place right on the stage. This beautiful woman was right next to me and we had a super fun time. A bunch of my friends were around us too. When the show ended, we're all saying goodbye to each other and I asked her if she was single. She literally cringed and said, "Not really." Of course she was fibbing. Okay, no big deal. She kept apologizing and I kept telling her it was fine until it got uncomfortable and I went off to talk to my buddies. I didn't mind at all. I was so proud of myself for having the balls to try. Silver with Us said. At 19, I was working at the video store in my hometown. There was going to be a lot of renovations in the building, so the store was closed for a few days. Management scheduled a meeting to get everyone up to date for new stuff, and to prepare for a new internal contest, divide people into groups for the contest, etc. I couldn't attend the meeting because it was my mother's wedding on that day. The wedding was amazing, everybody had lots of fun and it was genuinely one of the best events I've ever been to. The day after I come back to work, ecstatic and happy from the day before. Every employee is happy to see me. One of them tells me they named the group I was assigned to Britney Bitches or something just for me. I'm a big Britney fan. My boss eventually calls me to meet him upstairs in his office with my supervisor. I expect it's because he wants to bring me up to date on the goings and what happened at the meeting. Turns out he fired me. For a few months I had been losing motivation to be working effectively, and I had confided in my supervisor about my problems. She and I got close over the years, so I felt comfortable confiding in her. Mind you, for a month before the firing I was back on track at work. The boss told me he fired me because he was scared I was gonna lose my motivation again. I had to do the walk of shame towards the exit. On the day after my mother's amazing wedding, I came home to my mom's and said I just got fired. Basically one of the worst days of my life. Never confide your personal problems to your superiors, folks. Creative Corinne said. Got rejected from a job as in raw when literally everyone else was accepted. I asked why, and it's because when they asked about something I had overcome, I had said that I used to have difficulty interacting with parents until I worked 2 public-facing roles, and now was super confident. They decided that meant I was too shy for the role. They never even read my resume. Super unprofessional. Mindspan said. I broke up with a girl in junior high and she proceeded to tell the entire school that the reason for our split was because I was gay. In 1980 this was not nearly the same as today. Later that year I went up to a girl and asked her to an upcoming dance. She sneered at me and said I thought you were gay and just walked away. This stigma followed me all the way through high school, small town in Prince Edward Island, Canada, and I didn't have another girlfriend until after I left the province to move to Ontario. Didn't help that my first name is Ray, which prompted my inevitable nickname through the period. Not gay, not at all effeminate, yet this stuck to me for years and essentially ruined my life until I moved. Yutingayud said. Not really a rejection, but in high school, I was in class talking to some people in a circle. I got up to leave and as I was walking away, one of them uttered, "Wow, he is the worst acne I have ever seen." At the time it bothered me, but it never got me depressed or anything. I eventually got on Accutane, which cured it. The cruelty of that comment makes me laugh today. High school was fun in that it had so many weird social moments. I like to think kids are nicer today, because I consider myself lucky that I didn't let comments like that get to me. Overall Click 7286 said. I was a lot younger at the time, and I was really into this girl I went to school with. I was about 9. On a Saturday morning, I'd finally summoned the confidence to ask her out. I mustered the confidence, dressed up, and strolled around the block to her house. I paused, took a big breath, and knocked on the door. She responded. There was no precursor for me. I just went ahead and asked her out. She paused, gave me an odd look, replied no, and shut the door behind me, leaving me despondent in the street. On Monday, I went to school and was greeted with a barrage of laughter. It turned out that I'd tried to ask her out while her grandparents were standing outside the door, and they weren't impressed with some scruffy 9-year-old in strange clothes knocking on the door at 0800 to invite their devoutly Catholic granddaughter out on a date. We didn't speak to each other after that. It was brought up again in school. 1234 Tempcore said. This was almost 20 years ago now, geez. I met a girl in college who looked exactly like Sarah Chalk from Scrubs. She was unusually nice towards me, whereas most people in college simply ignored me since I was several years younger than most of them. She was a freshman and I was a junior, but she was a year older than me. We started studying together and I helped her improve her grades in several classes. When the end of the fall semester came around, I decided I was going to ask her out on a date. I worked up the nerve, asked her, and she said yes. The day came, I showed up at the restaurant a little early and simply waited. A light snow started falling and the street lamps turned on, making a really quintessential winter night in the Antique District look. After 2 hours of waiting, a mutual friend happened to be walking by and saw me sitting there at the table next to the window. He walks in and asked me what I was up to. I told him. He replied with, "Dude, I don't know how to break this to you, but she is at a party right now and she's with some other guy." Granted, this was a small college in a small town, so everyone knew each other. Just seemed like an odd coincidence that he would be the one to walk by. So, That sucked at the time. The next time I heard from her was a few years later when she asked for help with her master's program. Doesn't matter, I'm happily married now and realized I dodged quite a bullet back then. Snowfreak 2507 said, was at a bar restaurant for my mom's birthday, maybe 10-12 people with us. I got very drunk, and some girl was singing karaoke and was extremely talented. After she was done, I went up to her and said how impressive she was. She said thanks, and I walked away. Should have ended at that, because a few drinks later my drunk and desperate mind goes I should ask her out. I walk up to her and awkwardly tap her shoulder, without realizing she's sitting there with her family and her father. LOL. I go, can we talk? She's like, yay, can I have your number? To which she responds, oh, my boyfriend is the DJ, sorry, and her whole family looks at me all awkward like WTF. The combination of rejection and being too embarrassingly drunk to see how bad of an idea that was, is part of the reason I don't drink alcohol anymore. Infamous Lioness said, I went to college twice. The second time through I moved out of my parents' house and went to New York City to live in the school dorms. It was a small school of only 300, so everyone knew each other. We had the same classmates for the entire year, so I established a few rules with myself. Don't date anyone at school. Don't date roommates. Don't date classmates. Fast forward to the end of my first semester and I had gotten pretty close to my roommate. She kissed me. I'm bisexual and she knew, but at the time I thought she was straight. It never came up in conversation, I guess. She had just broken up with her boyfriend, so I told her to wait and it ended there. I stayed over the summer for the fast track year and she went home. She called me every other day and kept me grounded when finals rolled around. Second year we moved in together and she wanted to be in a relationship, but I told her to wait because I was afraid that our breakup may still be affecting her. Our last semester came and we started dating. COVID hit and we ended up getting separated when I encouraged her to go home and spend time with her mom. I ended up homeless for about a month when the school kicked us out of the dorms, but we stayed in touch. I found an apartment and we moved in together. Kept dating for another 9 months and one day I realized she was cheating on me with a roommate. Infamous Lioness said, I was devastated. I didn't say anything for over a month because I just couldn't bring myself to. She was there for me and then suddenly she wasn't, not emotionally or physically. Then one day they were hanging out in his room and I caught them. As far as I'm aware, they still don't know that I could hear them, as they started. They both knew they were trying to hide it from me and that they were hurting me in the process. I disappeared. Ran out into 10-degree weather in shorts and a jacket in the middle of snow in New York City. I was so angry that I don't remember what happened or where I went, but eventually I came to and was freezing. Went back to my apartment to find him sitting on his bed, ashamed, and my ex pacing back and forth in the living room. I was cold and didn't want to speak to either of them. I still remember our exact words when she asked if I was okay. Me, I love you. Or, used to, I guess. There was a really long pause and finally she said, her, I never thought I would have to come out as straight. I have never felt heartbreak like that and I wouldn't wish that on anyone, not even her. Gold Zero said, to be fair, you may have indeed had a bronchitis with no evidence of pneumonia at first, and so what he did was probably expected standard of care. When you came back needing oxygen and antibiotics, then it was appropriate to do so, but even then may not have been true pneumonia and they might have given you antibiotics just in case. I wasn't there, so I could be totally wrong. Medicine is a risk and benefit game. If I send this patient home without antibiotics, there's a high chance he will be fine. The unfortunate few get worse and need to come back. That's why we usually tell people to come back if they get worse. The benefit of doing it this way is to avoid overtreating, causing you to develop resistant bacteria that is harder to treat later, developing TIF, a deadly infectious diarrhea, avoid excessive cost like hospitalization, etc. Chewer Time said, not the most painful, but the most recent. Back at the end of last year, I started dating again after sitting out most of the year BC of the pandemic. Met a woman and we just clicked. First time in a long while where I felt an actual connection, made even more significant thanks to the solitude created by the pandemic. I think we fell hard and fast for each other, but then she revealed she was going back home to the other side of the world for several months, so we had a heart-to-heart about a bunch of things like future career plans, kids, religion, etc. to see whether it was worth maintaining things long distance. Unfortunately, there were a couple big things we didn't quite agree upon, so we ended up breaking up. In the several months since then, I've still yet to meet anyone whom I've had a connection anywhere near approaching that. Vocal 969 said, when I was around 27, I was living it up in Prague like a fresh-faced 18-year-old. Me and a mate of mine went out one night and played a game we called Cock Commander. This is where you would pick a girl at the club and your friend will tell you what your opening line has to be. You can then continue the conversation however you want, but you can't ever tell them you were told to say what you said. When you inevitably fail, you alternate players. Only rule was that you couldn't say something hurtful or rude. The idea was to have a laugh, not bring people down. Usually the lines were self-deprecating or just silly. Very rarely were they even close to approaching swap. It was a great way to get used to rejection. About an hour and 40 polite refusals to my advances later, it was my turn again. I picked this girl standing against a wall. I can't even remember what my mate told me to say, but it turns out it wouldn't matter. I approached the girl. As I'm about 2 meters away, she turns and looks at me. Just as I begin to smile and wave at her, she looks me up and down, scrunches up her nose and audibly exclaims ugh. Then, as if perfectly choreographed ahead of time, some other guy walks up to her and they just start heavily making out. It all happened so quickly that I hadn't stopped walking, so now I'm maybe a meter away, awkwardly just staring at these two making out. I didn't want to be rude, so I was like okay cool. Cool. I'll be off. You two have fun. There was no response. To be fair, they were pretty busy. Ah man, good times. Semi-Hemi-Demi-Dum said, your story reminded me of an encounter I had. I was at a club in Taichung dancing with my friends and some old, some new. One of the new ones just happened to compliment me on my dancing. And as if the universe could not bear the idea of me thinking I was a good dancer, a beautiful girl came up to me and said something along the lines of you don't dance, do you? I simply said, no, I don't. I can tell, she said. I laughed but said nothing more and she continued to dance in front of me before slowly fading into the crowd. I have no idea what her end goal was. Reading your story made me think it could have been some sort of dare or game like yours. But Magnuson said, my ex I was with for 7 years, engaged, and planning a wedding with. Her parents insisted we cancel the wedding and shortly after she declared we should go on a break. Her only explanation was I needed to improve myself. I did. She then ignored it all and never spoke to me ever again. Practically no explanation of any kind. She wanted me to not be a poor farmer. I'm not by any means anymore. Likely making more than she is now. Who knows? She only wanted me for land I guess? Money? I have no idea, and never will. Don Kiddick said, when I was 16 I had my first real relationship and decided to take her out to a local restaurant for Valentine's Day. I knew we'd look real silly young compared to everybody else, but I didn't care. I was so in love with her at the time. Halfway through the meal, she just starts crying. I ask what's wrong, and she says this is so romantic, but I don't deserve it. I'm leaving you and proceeds to dump me, in the restaurant on Valentine's Day, in front of everybody else there having a romantic dinner. I looked the right tool, and otherwise had my heart ripped out in the process. And I got dumped for basically being nice to her. I still don't really understand what was going on. We did get back together later down the line, but we eventually broke up for good some months later for more just random thought processes on her side. She was a real learning curve when it came to relationships. Traditional Newt 4172 said, does a witnessed one count? Sister, in college was pretty harsh with guys. I mean she'd keep them around but make it clear her options were open and made a dick out of them for displaying any devotion. One guy showed up in our town during Christmas break. He seemed awesome, original, funny. She didn't know he was here. This guy dressed up as Mercury, like the FTD florist guy, ran down the main street, in traffic, carrying a big bunch of flowers. It was hilarious and pretty awesome. Ran up on our porch. She opened the door and sent him home. Kept the flowers. Decades ago, still makes me cringe. Sensitive Inspection 8 said, we were friends for a while, She wasn't happy with her boyfriend, and when they finally broke up 'cause he cheated, I was there for her and we started flirting and talking all the time. She then told me she didn't like me that way 'cause she was still trying to move on. This was about within the week of the breakup, so I probably asked for it. About a month later she starts talking about one of her old friends coming back and how much she liked him. I eventually blocked her on everything and tried to move on. Eventually our mutual friend tried getting us all together again and I agreed 'cause maybe it would help. He eventually told me she was going to therapy and wanted to fix herself so she could be with me. He also showed me the texts of it for proof. I start talking to her a lot more, but I don't insinuate that I know about it. For over a month I kept thinking about if she actually liked me back. I couldn't sleep at night and was so paranoid. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I talked to the mutual friend about it. He brought it up to her and she just tells me she doesn't like me that way. I felt lead on and useless. Ended up blocking her again and have successfully avoided her for this entire year. Feel much better mentally, but I always end up thinking about her. She wasn't beautiful or special, but her voice made me fall so hard. IDK, would I do if I ever heard her voice again? Hopefully I never do. WrestleSpeechface said. In high school, I was incredibly shy, like to the point that if someone looked at me I'd turn 14 shades of red. When I was a sophomore, I had a huge crush on a classmate 1 year higher than me. Every spring, my school had its own version of the Sadie Hawkins dance. I gathered up every single bit of courage I had, and encouraged and assisted by several mutual friends, decided to go far outside my comfort zone and ask him to the dance. Keep in mind, this wasn't a casual suggestion on my part. I put a lot of time, energy, resources into asking. Not that that matters, but it wasn't just a "hey, wanna go together" sort of scenario. After several agonizing days, anxiously awaiting his answer, word got back to me that he asked another classmate to go with him, so he wouldn't have to go with me. Then had the audacity to suggest that us, along with our respective dates, all go in a group to dinner and a dance. The rest of my years in high school were just as bad, but college was much better. Panic Puppet 11 said. I got dumped. Twice. On the same day. By the same girl. She broke up with me, then changed her mind, then changed it again. And that's actually the runner-up. Nearly 7 years ago now I met this amazing woman. Totally out of my league attractiveness-wise, we shared a lot of interests, both history nerds, tons in common, and had a great time. Got the courage to kiss her on our third date just before Christmas. Romantic spot on a bridge overlooking a moonlit stream. Everything was perfect. But in the new year she spent a lot of time away helping with a friend who'd just had a baby, and the timings were all wrong. She wasn't sure how long she was going to be in the area for. Ironically, I've moved 3 or 4 times since, and I think she's still there, and I can still remember the message she sent me. She didn't want to start something she wouldn't be able to finish, and she genuinely wished we'd met a few months earlier or later. And that's the painful part. I did nothing wrong. She did nothing wrong. It was that awful perfect storm of the right person at the wrong time. To me, she'll always be the one that got away, not because she was my soulmate, or because we had our lives planned out, or because we had one of those connections that come but a few times in a lifetime, but because we never had the chance to try. Ipakakupi said. I was doing my master's degree in art history and my professor straight up said the first draft of my essay was dumb. In retrospect, yeah, maybe it wasn't great at the time. But I was nowhere near finished and some actual constructive criticism would have helped. That was his job as a teacher, technically. At the time I was dealing with unmedicated depression and ended up dropping out. My bachelor's paper he loved though, and I wrote that while mildly psychotic. Either way, it would be nice if college professors cared about their students' mental health. Like, maybe recommend you see a therapist when you hint in 30 pages about wanting to be killed by God. Mito Inhoven said. Wasn't even a straight-up rejection. It was a slow fade to irrelevance by the person and people around them only because they see you as someone below their status. I had a thing for a classmate of mine in college. The prettiest and most elegant specimen in the building versus me, a nerdy thin young person who drinks with friends and plays computer games. We talked through a friend who introduced me to her and at first it was great, so great that in mere days we were talking comfortably non-stop. I did not even have to wait hours for her to reply to my messages. We would say hi to each other as we passed by each other at school, She would always smile with radiance at my lowly self and it would make my day, hence, I always make sure to cross paths with her each morning. Her friends tend to look at me with disgust because they thought I was not good enough for her immaculate beauty, not a lot of confidence on my side back then, always needed a haircut and some grooming. Few months passed and I decided to ask her out. I was met with a resounding yes, under one condition, that is I should go to their house a few hours before to meet her mom and have a little chat, interview, beforehand. I was informed of this previously by her common friends that her mom always does this with new people, also, that her little brother would join us as chaperone. I gladly accepted and brought my best self that day. Mito and Oven said. When I got to their address, I was shocked to see where she lived. It was a huge house and it screamed rich. I felt intimidated already because I did not come from a wealthy family, but I still pushed through. I liked her that much back then. So when I got inside, her mom joyfully welcomed me on their mansion of a house. She then started to ask me several questions as my date finished up getting ready. Questions were like, where do I live? What do my parents do? How many siblings I have? What were my plans after college? I answered truthfully, knowing that she might not like what my background and social status was. My date even came out one time and told her mom that I was one of the top students of her batch. I was not, just to impress her mom. After a few questions she let us go out. Typical date, we went to the mall, eat ice cream, went to the arcade, etc. That time I really saw her enthusiasm in doing things with me, and I knew she was really into me. I spent all of my savings for my allowances just for this date, in order to make it as fancy as she deserves. It was a success. But then, on the following months I started to notice that she replies a bit slower and less frequently as before. She started saying she was busy and had lots of things, etc. I understood, and because we were graduating we should be busy that time. Less and less of her I got to see, and until graduation, the last interaction of us were having a picture together and that was it. I went to med school and she went to New Zealand to pursue further studies and work. Never heard from her since. Saw her in IG and FB sometimes and she was having the time of her life. She had a boyfriend there and was living the high life. Mito and Oven said. Fast forward to today, I am a doctor. She finished her master's at NZ and worked back here in our country, but then eventually quit her job to join beauty pageants. She was that beautiful, and still is. One thing I concluded was I did not meet her family's standards when it comes to social status and wealth. They were at the top and I was near the bottom. I just accepted it back then and got over it after a few months, asking myself, what is wrong? Did I do something bad? Was I not good enough for her? Did her family not like me? Did they see me as a threat? Those days getting less and less of her was very painful, and the sudden realization that I was never in her league was a big punch on the gut after a slow, painful decay. TLDR, I got rejected because the girl was rich and I was not. No confrontation, just a slow and painful disappearance in their world. Future Force 77 said. Another one, I dated this guy long distance who lived in Italy. He came here twice and I went there for a holiday too. No regrets on that one. Italy was beautiful. We also spoke via Messenger every day. One day I was cruising the friendship site where we first met and saw his profile picture had changed to one of him with another woman. When I asked what happened to our relationship and why he didn't want to be with me, he told me, I like you physically, but not romantically. A few years before that I'd been totally in love with my boyfriend, and one day he broke up with me using the classic I love you, but I'm not in love with you anymore. Fast forward a couple of weeks and I spontaneously took the bus to his house to drop off his DVDs. Not expecting him to be in, he opened the door and he was with another girl. I knew her and knew they'd been friends, so it quickly became clear he'd probably dumped me for her. What's worse is that she had the same name as me, so the introduction made me mad. I remember thinking, I'd better behave and not get mad, because she was a police officer. Wow, it hurt bad, but it was a long time ago. LOL. Ask Me for a Story said. I solo traveled to Mexico this year and I met a beautiful Argentinian there named Marisol. She said my name like Yerazun. I loved it. There was 6 of us, me and 5 crazy Argentinians. We rented a house on an island called Isla de la Pasión off the coast of Cozumel. We had the whole island to ourselves. We made a huge fire on the beach and swam naked in the ocean and smoked Argentinian weed. Amazing trip. At the end Marisol had to get back early in the morning. I was out walking on the island watching the sunrise. She was calling for me in her beautiful broken English. Yizun, looking for you, Yizun. I didn't go to where she was, even though she was close. I wanted that to be the last words from a beautiful woman, so I could remember that forever. I keep memories like that. One time my girl from Sweden whispered "Du har fina ögon" on a warm muggy night next to the ocean in Australia, and I will never forget that memory as long as I live. I wanted a memory like that with Marisol. Back in the US though, we found common ground. I showed her my stories from Reddit and she showed me her stories. I'll never forget the day she typed, "I wanted to come back and see me, so I booked another trip, this one just for her and me." I picked her up in Cancun and we went to Cozumel and made love and stayed in beautiful resorts and rode scooters around the island, and it was one of the best weeks of my life. Ask Me for a Story said, as soon as I came back to the US I wanted to book a trip back to Mexico to be with her again. She said, "Oh, you want some more of this Latin woman, don't you?" Fuck yes I do. I booked another trip to Cancun where she was working in a rooftop suite overlooking the ocean where I thought we could spend a week together. But then her ex came back into the picture. This fucking American military guy named Jack came back to Mexico to stay for 3 weeks to win her back after he let her go. He let this beautiful woman go. What a dumbass. She snuck over to my rooftop suite one day anyway, and we made love in the hot Mexico sun and played the game Weeder Candy, and she ate 2 edibles. I didn't want her going back to her boyfriend. I hid her shoes and her underwear and played "Stay With Me Beautiful Girl" on the Bluetooth speaker, but she wouldn't stay. She went back to him. She said, "I will never see you again." I said, "Yes, yeah, say Yizun one last time when you are leaving," but she said, "That's stupid, I will no say that goodbye forever," and she left. I thought I would never see her again, so I did solo traveling, and then I went to Cozumel where we had spent that amazing week together. I got a scooter and rode around the island, but it wasn't the same without her. I was thinking when we were riding the scooter together down the coast and it started raining, but it was still warm and we had our arms and legs out and she was yelling "I love this" and I was yelling "Me too." Ask Me for a Story said, I went snorkeling in the ocean just before sunset and captioned the photo on Instagram, "Sunset at Cozumel, one of the good parts of life." When I spent that week with her and we went to the ocean or went up the lighthouse or had beers at the Bob Marley bar or opened the windows at the resort and felt the wind coming off the ocean, I would always tell her that it was one of the good parts of life. I went back to my hostel and took 2 edibles and listened to the rain and laid in bed. But then my phone started blowing up. "You are in Cozumel? Why are you in Cozumel?" It was Marisol and she was in Cozumel as well, 2 cities and a ferry from where I thought she was. I said, "Send me your location." She did, even though she was staying at her boyfriend's hotel. I couldn't believe it. But I had taken 2 edibles and the streets were so wet from the rain. I wrecked the scooter right away. It went sliding 15 feet down the road and I was running after to catch it. I decided to take it slow and go down the back roads. I picked her up and said, "Are you ready?" She said, "Sí, papi." Damn, I love it when Hispanic women say that. She got on the scooter and we went down the back roads to the B Hotel where we spent that first night together in Cozumel. She said, "I worried, we have only one helmet, what if police pull us over?" I said, "Hey, don't worry." Fuck, right away I saw flashing lights behind me. Shit. I'm high as fuck on a scooter on wet roads, 1 helmet short, getting pulled over by Mexican police. She got off the bike and said sternly, "You no speak at all. Your Spanish is stupid." I speak, "You be quiet." Ask Me for a Story said, the police get out and shine the flashlight on us. My leg is shaking so I stay behind the scooter. They ask me some questions and I said no hablo español, so they talk to her. They shine the light in my eyes and ask if I need drug or alcohol tests and she tells them no. I think I am going to jail for sure. They ask her why she is traveling late at night with me and she looks at me and says in English, "I going to have to tell them everything." I say, "Do whatever you have to do." She tells them about Jack and me. And the officers start laughing and go, "Ooh, triangulo amoroso." This fucker goes back to the radio and starts saying triangulo amoroso into the police radio. Not for security or anything, just to tell the other guys the story. They are all laughing and then finally even feisty Marisol starts laughing and then they start throwing numbers back and forth. 1,000 pesos, 300 pesos, 800 pesos, 500 pesos, okay 500. She tells me, "Okay," he is saying he will take 500 pesos. I have never pulled money that quickly out of my wallet in my life. 500 pesos, fuck yes, take it. He gives me back my license and says I am free to go. What the fuck, we got out of jail for 500 pesos. That's $25. You can't get out of Monopoly jail for $25. But they said not her, she has to go with us. So she got in the cop car and they told me to follow on my scooter. I'm in the wrong country, high as fuck, riding a scooter on wet streets following Mexican police officers with my girl in the back seat. I was thinking maybe I should just drive away. I can outrun police in Mexico on a scooter, I've done it once before. But I wanted to be with her. More than I wanted anything in the world. Ask Me for a Story said. Back at the hotel it was only Marisol, no police. She told me in the cop car they were flirty with her. They said, oh, don't worry about the guns, bebe, we will protect you. She said, I no worry about guns, I was in the Argentinian military. They said, oh, we are sorry, we don't usually take bribes. She said, yes, you do drop me off at the hotel and leave us alone, so they did. I couldn't believe it. We started jumping up and down like holy shit, did that just happen? We checked into the beautiful B hotel, two lovers alone again, one last night together. But after we made love and held each other for a while and opened the windows and listened to the wind coming in off the ocean, she asked me to take her back to her boyfriend. I couldn't believe it. She was rejecting me again and picking him. After the week together, after the rooftop suite together, the night escaping jail together, she still wanted to go back to him. It hurt so bad, it felt like I was getting kicked in the stomach. I told her I couldn't drive, we still only had one helmet and I was still high. She told me in her feisty, but still cute, voice, okay, I walk. And went downstairs. Jesus, I yelled down from the hotel balcony, hold on, let me get some pants on at least and get my wallet and I will walk with you. When I got downstairs she said, Yazun, I have good news. I got us a helmet. Where the fuck do you get a motorcycle helmet at 3 o'clock in the morning? I stopped questioning long ago how beautiful women get what they want, it just seems to happen for them. So we put on our helmets and we took off riding down the coastal road. I was nervous for police but there was no one anywhere. Just the wind from the ocean whipping through our hair. I got to the main road where her boyfriend's hotel was and I didn't even pull over to the side of the road. There were no cars for miles, it was just us and the stars and the moon over the ocean and a gentle breeze. We were the only two people in the world. We kissed for a long time right there in the middle of the road. And Ask Me for a Story said. Then she fucking walked away. I was so sad. I thought she would say something funny or thank you or it's been amazing. Nothing. She just walked to the corner and looked back at me and she was crying hard, tears all over her face. She put one hand up, barely even a wave. And then she walked into the hotel. Back into the arms of another man. Why him? Why Jack? American military man, her choice over me. The next morning I checked out of the hotel and turned the scooter in, but not before I made one last loop past her hotel. Maybe she was waiting for me outside on the front steps where I had picked her up to start our wild night together. But she wasn't there. She had decided to be with him. I got on the ferry to cross back to the mainland but I wanted to sit in the very back. I turned around the whole time it left just in case I heard it, just in case I heard her yelling for me. The streets were quiet. Those narrow island streets impossibly bright and sun-bleached and impossibly still, only the palm trees making any movement at all. I wanted to hear that sound so bad, more than any other sound in my life. Yazun, Yazun, come back and take me away. I wanted to hear those words coming across the water. I don't know what kind of trouble you would get into if you jumped off a city ferry, but I would have done it in a heartbeat. I would have done anything to hear her say my name one more time. But she had made her choice. The most painful rejection I ever got. And I never saw her again.